secure vendor file management, and cleansing using the Oracle family of ERPs. Today's presenters are Roger Nessier, VP of Client Management, S28, and Joe Flynn, co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer of Levante. Roger provides product development services to software companies and companies that use software in their business. He has delivered dozens of projects to a range of clients around the world using global teams from gathering initial requirements to design, build, to long-term support. He is currently VP of Client Management at S28 and has held services management and product development executive positions at i2 Technologies, Symphony Services, and Steel Wedge Software. Joe is co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer of Levante and is a recognized expert in the field of P2P processes. His 15 years of AP experience was essential in naming him one of the pros to know in 2013 Supply and Demand Chain Executive magazine. We'll be emailing a link to the recorded webinar to all that registered, and we'll be posting the recording of the webinar on S28's website in a day or so. Thank you, Roger and Joe, for presenting, and I'll turn the webinar over to you now.
Thanks very much for that, Mike. So today we're going to cover a little bit about S28, the work that we do. We're going to talk about our partnership with Levante. We're very excited about our partnership. We're excited about the opportunities it presents in bringing Levante into your enterprise environment. And we'll talk about how the Levante product integrates with your enterprise software product as well, and then have a little time at the end for questions. Next slide, please. So S28 has been around for almost 9 years now. We have over 300 employees. About half of those are U.S.-based, and we are an IT services consultancy. What that means is that we provide services to both software companies as well as Fortune 500 and Fortune 50 companies to help them get the maximum value from their IT investments. So we provide either integration services, implementation, upgrade. We do work in software development. We're working extensively with Oracle technologies and applications. We're working extensively in the big data and business intelligence space, having worked with all of the major products, both open source as well as commercial products. And we also have a practice around information and lifecycle governance with IBM Optum, and that's become a very significant piece of our business. Through referrals from our clients, we are 100% referenceable, and we've built long-term strategic partnerships with very, very large and small organizations. Our motto is extreme service, so we can respond to your needs very rapidly. Next slide, please. So this gives you a sense of some of our customers. If you look at the various companies that we're working with, they range from some giants like Chevron, Merck, Pfizer, Citibank, Wells Fargo, IBM, to smaller companies. For example, like Expedia, as an example, or Triple Point, Revitas, Arena. So we're very comfortable working at both ends of the spectrum on a multitude of different types of projects, everything from time and materials type work to fixed bid projects. We can provide temporary resources to cover vacation periods. We can also provide resources all over the world. We've done projects in the United States, in Europe, and in Asia-Pac. Next slide, please. So our founders came out of Oracle. This is a key point for S28. So they have very, very strong background in Oracle products and technologies, and not just core Oracle products like EBS, but also Oracle-acquired products like Siebel, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, Hyperion, Primavera as examples. We have experience in our company because we got started as a valued Oracle partner in enhancement migrations and extensions to the product, and we are also doing extensive work in the area of performance tuning and system administration. Next slide, please. We also have branched out into other areas, non-Oracle product areas like SAP. We're doing work with Microsoft Dynamics, for example, at a company called Bechtel, which is the largest project management company in space. We're working with all of the BI products, both more of the traditional products like MicroStrategy, SAS, and Cognos, as well as some of the new data visualization products like QlikView, Tableau, and Spotfire. Exciting startups like Zora, as example, and we are a Salesforce.com partner and doing Force.com work. We have a very, very strong number of our customers that shy away from off-the-shelf applications. So we do everything from requirements management to deployment and long-term maintenance of custom applications of companies like E&J Gallo, Stanford University, Wells Fargo. Next slide, please. On the application integration side, we're very comfortable with both SOA-based integrations, point-to-point integrations, EAI, using EAI tools as well. We have a number of folks that are very, very well versed in data management, data ETL, cleansing activities, and can also do performance tuning around how data is represented. We're working with industry-leading middleware such as WebSphere, Cast Iron, Oracle as examples, as well as Oracle Fusion. Next slide, please. I think this is an important slide from the standpoint that Levante is very much aligned to procure-to-pay and order-to-cash in terms of how it integrates in the enterprise software ecosystem. So we have a lot of expertise with these business flows, with both the modules as well as the handoffs between the modules to complete these business flows. And understanding the business flows means that you can essentially give us very high-level requirements, and we can complete the full integration, including UI development. Next slide, please. This slide is just an indicator of the various technology areas that we've worked with, product areas that we work with in our Oracle practice across multiple customers. Next slide. You can also see here from this slide that we have, as I said earlier, we have broad experience across multiple products within the Oracle family. Next slide, please. So why have we partnered with Levante? Well, we feel that given our background, given our experience with the whole procure-to-pay, order-to-cash cycle, with understanding how vendor data gets managed, that we can provide a lot of value in terms of integrating into the Levante solution and help you achieve your strategic project initiatives. To Joe, and he's going to take the presentation from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. And I just want to point out that we are also very excited about working with S28. Your personal reputation, Roger, as well as the reputation of S28 precedes you. Everyone in the industry speaks well of S28, and it's really almost an honor for us to be able to talk to our customers, our joint customers, about how we can help them speed their onboarding process and have a real good, solid partnership with a firm that can integrate the data that we collect into their ERP system, be it whatever ERP system, or their purchasing and payment systems for that matter. So I want to tell you how much we appreciate being on this call with you and how much we appreciate the relationship. Generally on this slide here, we do have an application that helps automatically collect vendor data, that helps speed the onboarding process, and basically that last bullet point, help accomplish your strategic projects. If we can go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about what are those strategic projects. From time to time throughout the year, we talk to many different corporations, hundreds actually. And we find out that in the finance department, there are many different things, goals, issues, projects that they have in mind that they'd like to accomplish, and maybe not necessarily just today, but in the next coming years, months, quarters. These things run a wide variety of different topics, anything from cleansing their vendor master file to, hey, we have new government regulations coming up like W9 and the W8 FACTA process overhaul, and we need help managing it. This isn't just limited to documents that are collected. It could be other things, like looking at, is the supplier that we have already on the Office of Foreign Assets and Controls list, the terrorist watch list? You know, we have an initiative to convert our suppliers to ACH instead of writing checks all the time to save money, to get ROI from the actual relationship with the suppliers. Our application at Levante helps you develop a communication framework by which you can communicate with your suppliers in real time and really drive any of these projects or all of these projects at the same time. Many times when we're talking to customers or to prospects like yourselves, we find that it's not just one of these things that are on the strategic objective list, but many of these things. So usually when we're looking at this with our prospects, we say, hey, you know, take a look at this list and tell us what you think. One of the reasons why we like partnering with S28 so much is that they have such a good in-depth knowledge of order to cash that as they went through and saw all the different processes that we can facilitate, they really understood what the value-added proposition to their customers and to our customers would be. So we go to the next slide. We can talk about what the common elements are of these strategic projects. We've done a lot of work trying to figure out, okay, if we're going to help companies tackle one or more of these issues at a time, it's sort of in one big project. And so we came up with a list. And this list is prospect tested. This is something we've done a lot of outreach, a lot of polling on, a lot of paneling on. In fact, we're a big polling and paneling question type company. And one of the things that we found is that people acknowledge that reaching out to suppliers is very complex. That's not easy to get information from the different departments at a customer. Indeed, when they look at their ERP systems or they look at their vendor master files, they actually don't even have the contact information yet. So they know they need to outreach, but they don't have contact information. So it's our job to go out there and facilitate the communication, both to collect the information as well as to create that communication pipe, that engine, by which they can reach out. We often say that a good solid ERP system lets all the people, all the constituents in a company, all the stakeholders around the table to communicate. What we do at Levante is we go out and we enable one of the chairs to spin around and communicate with the suppliers out there. We do this in a way where we can then take whatever information we get and go out to third-party government agencies and validate the data that the suppliers give you in real time. If they give you a bad address, we can find that out and make sure it gets corrected. Also, we do it in an environment where there are controls, where you can say, all right, we want to have workflow that says this information is good, but we want to make sure someone approves it before we put it in our system. So speaking of us and how we communicate with people, we actually have a bunch of polls. And it's now that we're going to actually probably run our first poll. And this poll is a simple one. We like to ask this every time we have a presentation. It's basically, what would make your company hold off on doing any of these strategic projects? And I realize that it might not be all finance people on the line, but all of us have strategic projects at our businesses. And sometimes when we look at these things, we think, yeah, we really could get a lot of value if we did this. But we just can't. Either we don't have the time, the budget, the staff, whether it's hard to integrate, these types of things. So if you could take a look at the quick poll that you just got and maybe fill that out, we'll probably have the answers. And here it is. We're going to graphically represent what are the reasons why people do not take these actions. And as you can see on the screen, so far half the people have basically said budget, which is really interesting. We're going to talk about budgets and ROI in a moment here, but I just thought that would be an interesting poll for us to throw out there. So why don't we just sort of move on to the next slide, if we could, after the poll, and where we talk about the actual communication problem. So if we move on one more slide, that'd be great. Next slide. All right, so here's a kind of draw a picture that basically articulates the challenges the way we see them. On the one hand of the graphic, you see that there are many, many suppliers. Now, this is contiguous against basically all companies. Some companies have 2,000 suppliers. Some companies have 100,000 suppliers. When we work with hundreds of companies currently, our client list. And sometimes people have as little as 2,500 suppliers, sometimes as many as 125,000 suppliers. But one thing is kind of consistent is at each individual corporate level, there are many different departments that have needs of information from suppliers. You have AP, procurement, risk, tax, IT, accounts payable. I mean, there's all sorts of groups that need information. In fact, many of those groups actually need different pieces from the same supplier. Added to the complexity, any one corporation may have multiple business units. My guess is most people on the phone today have many divisions by which they need to communicate with the suppliers in real time. Maybe they don't have a facility to do it real time, so it takes a lot of time. Generally speaking, as we grow our businesses, our supplier base gets diverse. There's a lot of turnover, so all the contact information that we collect actually ages. So sometimes we might have a contact phone number, fax number, and then we actually go to use it. It actually is no good anymore. The last big piece of this is about controls. Yeah, okay, you might have contact information, but how do you know if the information you want is expired? There's no workflow. You can say, look, we need to get an insurance certificate every year, every 2 years. And that insurance certificate we have, well, it expires. How do we know to look across all of our 10,000 suppliers, identify which insurance certificate is expiring, and send out the proper request at the proper time? And if we go to the next slide, we'll show you what our solution is. Our solution is to have some sort of, well, I'll say it, some sort of application in the middle, some sort of connector, some sort of way where all the suppliers can communicate and put all their information in one spot, and then all the different constituents that the company can retrieve from another spot. We call that Levante Connect. I think we all would understand if I just had a cloud there, but I thought we'd put our little logo in there just for a little shameless plug. I mean, generally speaking, what we're trying to do is we're trying to let the clients self-configure all the questions that go out to the supplier. One client might say, we have a term of service document. We need you to sign this. So we built an application by which you can add a document that needs to be downloaded. You can make it mandatory. You can add e-signature to that field. You can do pretty much anything you want. If that supplier is international, you can change the language. You have the outreach go to a different language if you'd like. If you're worried about this supplier being on the government terrorist watch list, before you actually receive it back from us, we go out to OFAC. We go out to the government agency like banking. You may say, if I'm going to approve, if a supplier wants to change a bank number, I want to make sure I approve it. So we give you workflow. It's configurable. You get to say, all right, any supplier that changes the bank number, it has to go through Becky. We make a workflow that flows right through Becky. She has to approve all bank changes. The beautiful thing about this is no matter what information you're collecting, you now have the opportunity to share it in real time across all the different divisions of your company. It's just like ERP system, except for instead of capturing all the data internally, we're capturing the data externally, albeit from the suppliers. Lastly, the last bullet point of real-time reporting, we have a really cool on-demand application where you can see the data in so many different ways. You can see spend analytics. You can see diversity information. It's really rich and robust. I invite anyone to take a look at it if they'd like to at the end of the webinar. But why don't we push forward a little bit? I mean, we look at there being three main elements to collecting information from suppliers. The first one is probably the most obvious, and that's just actually the data collection in itself. You know, when you look at this, it is true that it's not just enough to collect the address and the TIN number of a supplier. There are multiple addresses. You need the remit to addresses, the ship to address, the A address, the B address, the C address. Moreover, if your address is incorrect, you may be finding yourself making payments that go nowhere. And you end up with this control issue, having overpayments and duplicate payments, etc. So one of the things we do is we enable all our suppliers to enter as many addresses as they see fit. Additionally, any customer can make required the remit to address, the ship to address, anything, any fields they want. From there, before we even report it back to our suppliers, we go out to the USPS and make sure the addresses are valid. It's real important when you're collecting this information to realize there's more to it. Some suppliers, some clients want to collect diversity information. tax documents. Some people even want to collect contracts so that those contracts can be easily shared across their enterprise, really visible. We've seen some clients want to collect certificates that their suppliers are not using peanuts in the processing, because the products that they sell have to be certified that there's no peanuts in them to avoid peanut allergy conflict. It's totally configurable, and you can ask for almost any information you want with our application. Why don't we move on to the next slide? Data collection is the third-party integration. I mentioned the terrorist watch list a number of times, but there's many different areas of integration that are important to, I imagine, many of the people on the phone. The obvious one is when you collect a new supplier tax identification number for your suppliers if you're going to file on behalf of that supplier. If you do not, you face filing getting B notice fines against your organization. Well, the IRS has created a website by which you can log in, and you could say, hey, this is the name of the company, this is the number, is it right or wrong? The problem is, right or wrong, you then have work to do afterwards. So we built an interface where we automatically integrate with IRS. We submit the name and number, and if it's right or wrong, we then have workflow to either tell you that it was approved or go back to the supplier and say, hey, this didn't work. Additionally, there's other government regulations that we work on. We mentioned the USPS, but there's also the excluded providers list, excluded parties list. There's also the collection of W-8s. If any of the companies on the line are working with agencies, international companies, W-8s are appropriate. You have to collect this data. Now, the rules for W-8s are a little bit in flux. IRS is changing from time to time. But we enable you to collect these things correctly and report out them appropriately. Now, there's other information with your international suppliers that we collect, both IDs as well as, even different states have regulations and whatnot. But that list is sort of long, so I thought I would just do the basic ones in the number 2 of the 3 main elements. But let's real quick go to the number 3 of the main elements, and that would be the reporting and KPIs. Before we do anything as an organization, we have to look at, okay, what's this thing going to cost us? It comes down to brass tacks. If you remember back to that poll we did originally, 50% of people said that they thought budget was the most important thing. And I think that's pretty cool, because that's what we find too. Pretty much wherever we go, wherever we poll this, usually polls between 50 to 75% of people think that budget blocks everything. So what we try to do is we try to explain supplier management in terms of reporting and KPIs. Our whole interface is based around a real-time reporting interface. It's actually configurable. The reports are configurable. The workflow is configurable. You can create any field you want, send it out to your suppliers for requests. You can then do ad hoc reporting against those fields you create. We have an on-demand communication engine where you could reach out to suppliers. You have massive amounts of cross-departmental visibility. But ultimately, you got to figure out what is this thing going to cost versus what you're currently spending on managing your existing suppliers. And it's kind of elusive. Most people don't really know what they spend on managing their suppliers. They know what it costs to implement their ERP system, and most people don't really want to admit it. But when it comes to managing their supplier information, most people don't actually know. Do you think that your company is spending to manage both your new suppliers, that is onboarding suppliers, as well as managing the existing suppliers? It's usually about 20 to 25% of your suppliers are actually making changes on a regular basis. And someone in one of your departments, whether it's AP or procurement, somebody has to take those changes, tax, whatever department, and actually add them into the interface, in your ERP, and say, okay, this is the amount of money we're spending on this stuff. And when we really think, when it comes right down to it, we find that most people, they're not exactly sure. So on the screen now, we're saying that most people think they spend less than $250K. Well, this is a great segue to our next slide, our ROI calculator. We've actually, at Levante, have created an ROI calculator, and we have a little snapshot of this thing online here. Essentially what we're able to do is there's a basic and a more in-depth version. And what you're able to do is you're able to key in what your managers and what your associates' salaries are and how many suppliers you have and how many you on board on the left-hand side of the report there. And on the right, we have 11 different processes, and you can just mark up which ones you currently do, which ones you don't do, but you might want to do, and which ones are just not applicable. And you can just, put these numbers in, and we give you an example of what it will cost your company to manage these suppliers. And it's really interesting. I mean, I know we do a lot of this, looking at this doesn't take too much time. It's web-based. You can find out what your costs are kind of really in a couple minutes. So we do it more web-based. It's nice because I think in many respects what it does is it lets our prospects and customers know that we really understand their dilemmas and the plight that they have to manage this information. We realize it's not like a snap, that these challenges are real. What's really cool about this is when you take a little step further, we take all of those processes that are business processes on the right, we break them down into actual components, actual tasks. So we have a little longer version of this calculator. It takes about 15 minutes to fill out. And when you do fill it out, you actually can see who's doing the work across all the different departments. And basically you can say, okay, here's where we currently are in terms of our costs of managing these suppliers. And when you get into this calculator, we go task by task, minute by minute. What does it take for your people to onboard or to manage change in your supplier base? You get a number that is unique to you. That is your cost, very close. And then when you see what an ROI calculation actually is. And if we go to the next slide, we talk about our report. Generally speaking, if you take the 10 or 15 minutes to walk through this calculator to find out what it actually costs your organization, at the end of it, it is a web-based tool. You just log on, you fill the stuff out, but at the end of it, we give you the results. And in there, we ask you a number of questions. Like we ask, all right, so this particular task, let's say it's checking the TIN number at IRS, is it automated? And if not, are you happy with it? Would you like it to be automated? These kind of things. And at the end, we roll all this up, and we tell you, okay, here's where you sit. Here's the levels you sit in automation. Here's how effective you think it is. Here's how much money you spend by department. Here's are the processes that you don't currently do, but you've expressed interest that you want to do. Again, we tie it all together. They are strategic objectives, which is our first slide, that many companies have. They refer to things that they know they want to do, but they just don't have the resources. The first poll said it all. Budget. We're all short of budget. We all have strategic objectives. We just don't normally get to them because of budget. Well, we now have a tool that enables finance departments to fast forward a lot of their strategic objectives for sometimes 10, 15% of the cost it does to do it manually. We even have a tool in this ROI calculator that shows exactly what you would be paying or close to it. And then we give you a document at the end that explains, here are the costs that we think that you have versus what it actually will cost. We give you a real ROI calculation. We also have what we think are best practices in this document, and we show you graphically where we think we could take you if you use automation in our tool. For those of you who have ERP systems or spend systems and you want to get the information directly from our system into your system, that's where S2A comes in. A lot of people don't want to spend a lot of time handling this data. They want it to shuttle right over to their ERP or to their spend program. And that's where S2A comes in. They help us integrate with the customer's ERP system. So anyway, let's go to the one last slide, and then we'll have time for questions. We've generated a page here for this webinar called levante.com/asktheexperts. On this page, you can get this report where you can figure out how much it is your exactly internal costs. I know everyone guesstimated what it would cost, or you can figure it out literally. As well as you can take a survey. We survey a lot of people based on how do they manage their suppliers currently. And then ultimately we have a sandbox where people can see, what is it like to onboard suppliers? What is it like to send out a request? What will my suppliers see? Can I really onboard my suppliers in 3 days instead of 2 or 3 weeks? So at this point, I'll turn it back over to the group for questions. And again, Roger, I appreciate your time and making this presentation with you. It's an absolute honor.
We'll open it up for questions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the questions area of GoToWebinar, and we'll get them answered. Here's our first question. Our company is going through vendor consolidation. How can Levante help?
Well, I can take that. I mean, system consolidations is huge. This is happening everywhere. One of the things that we find is that most companies, whether they're merging different companies or whether they're centralizing from different locations into one location, like a shared service movement, you find that all these different applications have many instances of the same supplier. Now, we've been working with recovery auditing as well as supplier management for about 12, 15 years. So we have a lot of algorithms and a lot of internal logic that help us identify when suppliers actually are related, even though the client doesn't see it. We do a ton of vendor file cleansing, a ton of vendor file consolidation. So in many respects, our core functionality not only is to go out and outreach for new information, but is to take the existing information that we are given and really try to make sense of it all. Because sometimes consolidating vendors it's just not obvious. Yes, if you have IBM in St. Louis and IBM in Seattle, you could say they're probably related, yes. But it's not always so easy. And we have a lot of software and a lot of experience in doing that. Let alone the fact that we have over 2 million suppliers that we've already worked with, so we have a lot of head start on this process. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joe. Can Levante help me reach out to other companies that are using a particular supplier to understand how that supplier performs before I commit to using them?
We do not share supplier information across companies. That is to say, if Jack in the Box is using a certain supplier to buy buns, we don't let Burger King know that Jack in the Box is using them. A lot of times corporations think that their supply base is part of their strategic intellectual property. So we are clear never to really let the information of the suppliers, who they work with, leak out to other customers. We have a lot of measures in place that, in terms of data security. Having that been said, you can do a lot of analysis within your own organization. So if you have multiple business units that are working with the same suppliers, you can collect information on that supplier and share it across your organization. So we have a lot of comment fields and a lot of scoring and stuff you can do on a supplier, and that is visible across your entire organization. We do not let your internal comments want that just yet. They would like the insights from their competitors, but I'm not sure too many people would like their competitors to know who they're working with.
Great, thank you. We have a custom in-house system for order management. How easy is it to integrate it to Levante?
I'll let Roger take that one because Estuate is the masters of systems integration. We have an API that we can hand off, but I'll let Roger take that one.
Absolutely. So as I stated early in our presentation, we have vast experience in various types of integration, and that includes point-to-point integration, data file integration, using perhaps flat files, batch integration. But Levante is very, very easy to integrate to, and typically the way that Levante integrates into an enterprise software solution is using batch file. So the data that Levante uses or exchanges with the enterprise system is not so time sensitive that you need split-second updates in terms of the how updated that information is. So we found that integrating Levante into enterprise software works very well with the batch file integration mode.
Okay, great. Thank you. Does the Levante system become the vendor master?
Great question. I get that every time. It is our opinion that your vendor master should reside in your ERP system. The Levante system is a SaaS-based tool that sits outside your firewall where the suppliers can make suggestions as to which data you should use as the master data. But they're only suggestions. Ultimately, we believe that someone internally to your organization should be in charge of approving that information. So if somebody says, hey, our bank number is no longer 1234, it's 1235, somebody in your company is looking at that and say, do we really believe that? Let's test it. Let's do whatever. Let's call up the finance people. Let's validate this. And ultimately, only when that person thinks it should be entered into the ERP should it be entered into the ERP. But make no mistake, the freshest, best quality data comes directly from suppliers. It doesn't come from other third parties. You know, we do our best to keep our records like tip-top shape, but we probably turn over one piece of data on 50% of all the suppliers we work with per year. So that is to say, every quarter we're turning over a ton of data. So even I would tell you, you got to get it straight from the horse's mouth. You got to get it from the suppliers. That's the secret that we know. That's the tool that we build, and it is awesome. The power of having real-time supplier changes is very, it's a lot of power.
A number of government regulations that our finance department is asking us to integrate with, IRS, compliance, EPLS. Can Levante help us with compliance to these regulations?
Totally. That's one of the big driving factors of why we built the application the way we did in the first place. But what's really starting to crop up now is there's a lot of state regulations as well. Just this morning I was on the phone, I was trading emails. I guess there's a list of businesses in Illinois that a customer or prospect rather is having to validate that their Illinois-based suppliers are on this list or they are not. We are going to be building integration to that list. State of California has a list, a little different, but you get the concept. New Hampshire's passing a law that they want to have withholding tax, blah, blah, blah. All these things, it's not just OFAC, IRS, EPLS. There's other things as well. Casinos need to check certain lists at the government that we're working on. It's kind of funny, but once you get into your risk department, you realize there's probably a lot of stuff that could be automated and drive costs out of and labor out of the formula. I hope I answered that question.
Great, thank you. Looks like we don't have any more questions. If the attendees have any questions after the webinar, feel free to reach out to Roger or Joe, and they'd be happy to answer your questions. We recorded this webinar as well, and we'll have it up on S2H's website within the next couple of days, and we'll be sending out a recording as well. Thank you to the attendees for attending, and thank you, Roger and Joe, for presenting today. Roger or Joe, I'll leave the last word with one of you or both of you.
Roger, if you're okay, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation and all the great work you've done for us and our clients. You guys are great.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thanks very much for attending our webinar, and we're as excited as you are about the potential that this partnership brings and all of the opportunities that we have to present value to our clients.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys, and thank you, attendees. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.